The courtroom was cold, not just from the air conditioning humming overhead, but from the way the judge's eyes sliced across the room, sharp and skeptical. 17-year-old Layla Thompson sat at the defendant's table, hands folded in her lap, her back straight but tense. She wore a navy blue school blazer, pleated skirt, and black flats, the same outfit she'd worn earlier that morning when she'd left for school. Her braids were neatly tied back, her expression calm but guarded. Across the aisle sat the security guard who had accused her of resisting when she refused to empty her backpack in the school hallway without a female officer present. He claimed she had been disrespectful, threatening, and non-compliant. He never mentioned that she'd asked him 3 times to call a female staff member before he grabbed her arm. Layla's voice didn't shake as she explained what happened. "I didn't do anything wrong. I told him I didn't feel safe. I asked him to wait." But the judge, a middle-aged white man with silver hair and tired eyes, leaned forward, unimpressed. "So you're saying you refused to comply with a school safety officer?" Layla hesitated, choosing her words carefully. "No, Your Honor. I asked for my rights to be respected." He raised a brow. "Young lady, this isn't a debate club. You're in court." A few quiet chuckles echoed from the benches. Layla's stomach twisted. Behind her, no family sat. Her ride was late. She'd told her mom to come straight from work. She didn't want to be a burden. But now, under the judge's gaze, Layla felt like she was shrinking. "All I did was protect myself," she said again, softer this time. The judge sighed, writing something in his notes. Layla gripped her knee under the table. She had always been a top student. Honor roll, never suspended, never in trouble. But in this courtroom, all the things she wasn't seemed louder than anything she was. She wasn't loud, she wasn't angry, she wasn't guilty. But none of that mattered. Not here. Not yet. Then, the doors at the back of the courtroom opened. Boots echoed on the floor. Heads turned. And in walked Sergeant Denise Thompson, Layla's mother, in full police uniform, badge shining on her chest, her posture tall, steady, and unreadable. Layla's breath caught. And the judge? For the first time that morning, he paused. The moment Sergeant Denise Thompson entered the courtroom, the atmosphere changed, like someone had opened a window in a suffocating room. Her polished boots echoed with quiet authority as she walked down the aisle. Her dark blue police uniform was pressed to perfection, her gold badge glinting under the fluorescence. A sidearm rested on her hip, untouched but unmistakably present. Her face was unreadable, calm, focused, but fierce in a way only a mother can be. Layla's eyes widened as she turned around in her seat. Relief washed over her so fast, it almost made her dizzy. Her mother had made it. And not as a silent witness, but as a presence. Gasps rippled through the benches as a few spectators whispered, clearly recognizing her. A man in the back leaned to someone beside him and muttered, "Isn't that Sergeant Thompson from East Precinct?" The judge looked up from his notes, his pen freezing mid-sentence. His posture straightened slightly, his tone shifted, not dramatically, but noticeably. "And you are?" Sergeant Thompson stepped forward, her eyes never leaving the judge's. "Sergeant Denise Thompson. I'm the defendant's mother." His eyes flicked briefly to Layla, then back to the uniformed woman in front of him. "You're with the city force?" 15 years. Patrol, investigations, now lead supervisor at East Precinct. Her voice was measured, respectful, but there was no mistaking the edge. She wasn't here to beg. She was here to be heard. "And you're here as a witness?" "I'm here as her mother," she said simply. "But I'll be whatever the court needs me to be." The room was still. The guard who had accused Layla shifted uncomfortably in his seat, his confident posture from earlier now sagging at the edges. Suddenly, the narrative didn't seem so clean, so easy. The judge cleared his throat. "I wasn't aware the defendant had immediate family in law enforcement." Layla wanted to speak, but Denise gently placed a hand on her daughter's shoulder and stepped forward. "Your Honor, I've taught my daughter what to do when approached by authority, including how to stay safe, respectful, and aware of her rights. I've also trained officers in de-escalation techniques for over a decade." She looked at the guard now, her voice dropping just slightly. If she asked for a female officer and that was denied, that's not noncompliance. That's reasonable. And it's legal. Silence. The judge looked down, tapping his pen once. Then again. He seemed to be reevaluating everything. Layla's composure, her words, even the transcript in front of him. Because now it wasn't just a black teen with an attitude in his courtroom. It was the daughter of a police sergeant. A trained one, a respected one, a visible one. The court clerk adjusted her glasses. The bailiff looked uncomfortable. And for the first time since she entered that room, Layla saw the weight begin to shift. Off her shoulders and onto theirs. Her mother was not angry. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't glare. She simply stood there, as proof. That black girls aren't always what you assume. That behind every child they underestimate, there might be a parent who wears the badge and knows how the system works. Judge Whitaker leaned back in his seat, pen now idle in his hand. The courtroom was still, but it was no longer quiet in the way it had been before. Now it was tense, like the whole room was holding its breath. Across from Layla, Officer Brent, the school security guard who had made the accusation, looked suddenly much smaller in his seat. His crossed arms had fallen to his lap. His smug confidence had drained from his posture. The presence of Sergeant Denise Thompson had changed everything, and he felt it. The judge glanced down at the report in front of him. It says here that the defendant refused to comply with a search and became verbally aggressive. Denise's eyes didn't waver. "Do you have audio of that, Your Honor?" He blinked. Audio? There are cameras in the hallway where it happened. If you've reviewed the video, you'll see my daughter never raised her voice. In fact, she added, she remained seated and kept asking for a female staff member to assist with the search. That's policy in our district, and it aligns with student rights under state education law. Layla watched her mother with awe. She wasn't raising her voice. She didn't need to. She was speaking in facts. Calm, clear, ironclad truth. Every word landed like a slow hammer on stone. The judge looked at the clerk. "Do we have the footage on file?" The clerk nodded, then gestured toward a laptop connected to the monitor. A moment later, the screen came alive. Layla shifted uncomfortably as the video played. There she was, sitting against the lockers, backpack on her lap. Officer Brent stood over her, arms folded, barking words that had no sound in this recording. But the tone was visible in the way he leaned in, the way she flinched. The footage showed Layla calmly lifting her hands. She mouthed the words clearly. "Can you call a woman?" Then again, "Please call someone else." And again. Then, the moment. Officer Brent reached forward and grabbed her arm. She pulled away, startled. A teacher walked into frame, stepping between them. The footage ended. Silence fell over the courtroom. Denise folded her arms. That's excessive use of force on a minor. She didn't run. She didn't shout. She asked. Officer Brent tried to speak. She had an attitude. You can't always hear disrespect. It's in how they say things, how who says things, Denise interrupted. Her voice was still calm, but her eyes burned with steel. Be specific, Officer Brent. How do girls like my daughter say things? The officer opened his mouth, then closed it. The judge's face tightened. We've seen enough. The video contradicts the written complaint. There's no basis for escalation, and certainly not for detainment. He turned to Layla. You conducted yourself better than many adults would have. This case is dismissed. Layla exhaled, not dramatically, but deeply, like she had been holding something invisible inside her chest for hours. Her hands trembled slightly in her lap, and her mother gently placed a palm over them. I'm proud of you, Denise whispered. You never backed down. Layla didn't answer. She didn't need to, because she had walked into this courtroom alone, judged before she'd even spoken, and she was leaving free, not just by verdict, but by truth. The sun had already shifted higher in the sky by the time Layla and her mother stepped out of the courthouse. The concrete steps burned a little beneath their shoes, but for once Layla didn't notice the heat. She was too caught up in what she'd just experienced, and what it all meant. She had entered the courtroom as a defendant, a teenager under suspicion, someone small in a system too big. But she walked out as something else, believed. Layla looked up at her mother as they descended the steps. You really didn't have to come in uniform. Denise smirked, but her voice was low and even. I didn't come in uniform to show off. I came to remind that courtroom of something. What? That power doesn't always look like them. Sometimes it looks like us. Layla was quiet for a moment. Then she nodded. She was beginning to understand. When they got home that afternoon, her phone was already buzzing. Her best friend Sasha had posted a short message online. Not the video, not the footage, just a sentence. She told the truth. They didn't believe her until the badge walked in. It was liked and reshared dozens of times by nightfall. Later that week, Layla's school sent a formal email to all parents, stating that protocol around student searches will be reevaluated, and female officers must be present when requested. The school security team was to undergo sensitivity training, the kind of vague phrasing Layla and her mother had seen before. But this time, something felt different. Because the students were talking. Teachers, too. Even some parents began asking real questions. It wasn't just Layla's story anymore. It had cracked something open, a quiet, slow-burning awareness. And when Layla returned to school, something else had changed. She wasn't invisible anymore. Some students avoided eye contact. Others nodded subtly in passing. A few even came up to say, "That was messed up," or "Glad you're okay." But what stayed with her most was what her history teacher, Mr. Daniels, an older black man with graying edges and kind eyes, said after class one day. "I heard," he told her softly, "and I want you to remember this. You didn't win just because your mother wears a badge. You won because you were right. Don't let them ever make you think otherwise." Layla nodded, her throat tight, because deep down, she'd feared exactly that her truth had only mattered after her mother walked in. But now, she understood. Her truth had always mattered. The courtroom just couldn't hear it until it wore a uniform. And she knew, next time, someone else might not have a mother in a badge to walk in behind them. So maybe, she would be the one who stood beside them. Weeks passed. The court case faded from headlines. The hallway footage stopped circulating, and the security officer involved was quietly reassigned to a different school. But the impact? That didn't fade. Layla had changed. Not in the loud, dramatic way people imagine. Not with sudden speeches or viral fame. No, her change was deeper, steadier. She walked taller. She asked sharper questions in class. She challenged rules that didn't make sense. She carried herself like someone who had been through something and come out the other side still whole. Her classmates noticed. At lunch one day, a younger student, quiet, bookish, always alone, came up to her. He hesitated, holding his tray like a shield, then whispered, "I saw what happened. You were brave." Layla smiled softly and nodded. She didn't need to say anything. Her presence was enough. That afternoon, her principal called her into the office. For a moment, her chest tightened. Old habits. But this time, she was met not with suspicion, but with a proposal. "We're starting a student advisory council," the principal said, "to review school policies and give feedback directly to admin. We want you to lead it." Layla blinked. "Why me?" "Because you didn't just protect yourself. You made us all take a harder look." She said yes. A week later, she stood in front of a small circle of students, some quiet, some skeptical, some angry, and began to listen. Really listen. She wasn't interested in being a spokesperson. She wanted to be a bridge. Her mother watched from the doorway after the first meeting ended. "You ready for all this?" she asked. Layla shrugged, smiling. "I wasn't ready for court either. But here we are." Denise walked over, pulled something out of her bag, and placed it in Layla's hand. A small, worn patch, blue and gold, with a tiny fray at the edge. It was her first Academy badge patch, the one Denise kept all these years. "Why are you giving me this?" Layla asked. "Because power doesn't start with a badge," her mother said. "It starts when you speak, when you stand, when you don't back down, even when no one's listening." Layla looked down at the patch, then up at her mom. And for the first time, she saw her future not as something to survive, but something to shape. She wasn't just a girl who had been doubted. She was a young woman who had been tested and turned that trial into purpose.